When I uploaded my Quake 4 video, I intended it to be the final part of my Quake review series, but I have some unfinished business to attend to. About 10 years after the release of Quake III Arena, a new multiplayer-focused Quake game came out, titled Quake Live. I tried looking for Quake 3 online matches last time, and I was unsuccessful, as I only got to play with bots. I recently booted up Quake 3 and looked at the online servers available. As you can see, there are quite a few active lobbies, so I got excited and joined one of them. What I encountered might be one of the most sad moments I've had gaming. The lobby was just bots. However, according to the comments, there are apparently still forums and discords out there that play the game on a regular basis, so I apologize for that. You can technically still play the original Quake 3 online, but for the most part it isn't worth digging up and you should turn your attention to Quake Live. Quake Live is basically the spiritual successor and remake of Quake 3, and this game is pretty damn active to this day surprisingly. Before I talk about Quake Live further, I did want to clarify and fix certain mistakes in my previous Quake videos. Like I said before, Quake 3 is still played online by niche communities, but my overall point was that the player base is obviously not the same as it was in the 90s and that I missed out, being a twat born in 2000 and everything. Additionally, in my Quake 4 video, I said that the game was the last single-player id Software title released until Doom 2016, and I completely forgot about Rage, and there's no excuse for that. Even though the game was made by Raven Software, this would be the last single-player id game for over 10 years. The 2009 Wolfenstein received mixed reviews, and ever since Quake 4, there has never been another single-player Quake experience, and it's a shame to see the series in that state. From 2005 onwards, it was the dark age of id Software. I stand by the overarching message of the video, which is that after Doom 3, there was a long dark period for id Software, but Rage was released in 2011 nonetheless. Although id Software didn't develop and program Quake 4, and I even mentioned that Raven Software did it, id Software still had a hand in the game and they technically still made it as well. It's like the whole LJN argument, where LJN didn't actually develop those bad movie-based NES games, but their name was attached to it. Oh, and there's one more thing before we discuss Quake Live. I did fix the Windows 10 graphics issue with Quake 4, and some of that footage is even shown in my original Quake 4 video. If you weren't aware, Quake 4 has this weird graphical error on Windows 10 where it will display the game in very low quality, but it can be fixed if you tinker with the config files. With that all said, let's get down to Quake Live. If you had to pick one multiplayer Quake game to buy, I would recommend getting Quake Live instead of Quake 3 and Quake Champions. I've mentioned that Quake 3's player base has dwindled, and while it was the greatest multiplayer FPS at one point, I don't care what anyone says, Quake 3 with bots is not the most enjoyable experience on a Saturday night. I wish I could have played Quake 3 back in the glory days. I feel like maybe some people were rubbed the wrong way with my initial Quake 3 video, but I wasn't trying to say it was a bad game, not at all. In fact, I even called it the best game I've never actually played, and the whole idea of the video was to explain that I wish I did play Quake multiplayer because it seemed like a very social and fun time. Me saying that the original Quake 3 Arena has a limited player base isn't a knock on the game's mechanics or even the players who do still play, it's just I couldn't find a match. Dude, if you're still rocking out with your old Quake buddies and play Quake 3 online together, perhaps in a private lobby or whatever, that is something to be celebrated. You are kicking ass and taking names, and I have nothing but respect and a little bit of envy for you. Trust me, I wasn't trying to come into your world and take a shit on Quake 3, that would be out of line. On the other hand, Quake Champions is the most modern interpretation of Quake's multiplayer, and it adds loot boxes and hero-based mechanics that attempt to accommodate new online FPS players, but in the end, it pleases nobody. At least from what I've played, it's difficult to catch a game in Quake Champions, and it uses a less than stellar matchmaking system. As I pointed out in my previous video, it's not as if experienced players don't want newcomers to play their game, since it's really the opposite. But for some reason, people aren't that interested in Quake Champions. That is where Quake Live comes in, and I find it to be the perfect middle ground between Quake Champions and Quake 3. Quake Live is basically Quake 3, but with more players, and if you want to get a taste of Quake multiplayer without too much hassle, then Quake Live is the game for you. The gameplay is extremely frantic, and after playing a few matches, I was still completely out of my league, but it was still fun as fuck to play. As a new player, when you finally get the kill on someone, it feels electric, and Quake Live is the most satisfying Quake multiplayer experience that I've played. Quake Live has server browsing features similar to Quake 3, which is a step up from Quake Champions matchmaking. You have a list of servers you can pick right from the jump, instead of waiting around for players to slowly join a game. This streamlines the experience for new players and keeps Quake Live from being a drag to play. The skill ceiling is high as ever with Quake Live, and it's a game I would see myself playing over and over again, since I want to improve my skills with actual online players. Quake Live was recommended to me quite a lot, and yes, it is truly the ultimate successor to Quake 3. There are many game modes to pick from, and if you want classic Quake multiplayer, then turn your eyes to Quake Live. I also find the history of monetizing Quake Live to be a fascinating story as well. Initially, Quake Live was a free-to-play game with ads being placed inside of the maps. For example, there might be an ad billboard next to the rocket launcher placements, but due to the fast-paced nature of the game, players wouldn't even glance at the ads on display. Rightfully so, the advertising companies asked id Software to alter the way that ads were presented, and Quake Live then added built-in commercials. Eventually, Quake Live was retired, and now you just pay a couple of bucks on Steam to have it. If you want a pure, fast-paced Quake action experience, then I would totally recommend it. It's only $5 or so, and yeah, Quake Live is worth it. I do hope to see more players in Quake Live, because while it does feature a good community of people, there should be even more people in the game. To conclude though, Quake has been an interesting franchise to cover, and while it shouldn't have really been a franchise, I will always have a bit of a soft spot for it. Quake 1 is an incredible first-person shooter and pioneered the genre. Quake 2 caused the Quake series to have an identity crisis, but overall it is a decent game. Quake 3 defined the multiplayer-focused shooter and might be one of the most important FPS games ever made. Quake 4 is an underrated single-player experience that unfortunately came out around the dark ages of id Software. Quake Live was a solid return to form for the multiplayer side of the series and had a pretty interesting business model at the time, with it being free to play. As for the future of the Quake series, I have absolutely no idea where they can go from here, at least from a single player standpoint. Quake Champions is continuing the multiplayer legacy of the franchise, but even that isn't doing so well, and Quake's potential single player offerings is a mystery nowadays. This hopefully concludes my Quake review series, and I figured Quake Live was an important game to cover, as well as using this video as an opportunity to highlight a couple of my fuck-ups. I stand by the videos I made on Quake 3 and Quake 4 specifically, but I should not have forgotten about Rage like an absolute dipshit. That being said, this brings my Quake review series to a close, and I thank you for watching. Take care.